Welcome to Let's Go There, a podcast featuring a group of women with a wide range of life experiences in dealing with everyday challenges. We hope you will enjoy this episode.
Hello, Kim. How are we doing today?
Hi, Ava. Lovely to hear your voice. I'm doing really well today. Lovely. Great.
It's fantastic to hear from you too. So, we're going to be discussing today spiritual abuse. So last week, or the last time that we were here, we introduced domestic abuse and the forms that domestic abuse can take. One of these forms, and especially for women of faith, women who are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, whatever faith they are, one of these forms are spiritual abuse. So spiritual abuse is not in the government definition of domestic abuse, but it's a form of abuse, but that's recognized in practice, and certainly is recognized among people who work with women of faith. So we wanted to touch on that a little bit today. I wonder if I can just begin with a definition of what it is, and then perhaps, Kim, you can enlighten us on what this can mean for women or men who have this particular experience. So this definition I've taken from Abraham's, Agatai, and Mullerville. It's a paper from 2018, and you can access it from you can download it from the London School of Economics. It's called Faith, Spiritual Abuse and the Search for Justice. It's a 2018 paper. And they define spiritual abuse as coercion and control of one individual by another in a spiritual context. So this might include, for example, deriding a woman's religious beliefs, denying her time to pray or fast at appropriate times, or forcing her to transgress deeply held religious tenets. Or there might be an insistence on obsessive observance on every aspect of ritual. Scriptural texts may be used or misused to demand obedience and reinforce the perpetrator's entitlement to headship. So, here's our definition. I wonder, Kim, if you can enlighten us on what some of that might mean in the everyday for women or men who are having this particular experience.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Ava. Just to mention also that spiritual abuse is really not limited to one religion or denomination or group of people. It can happen really in any religious group. Okay, so I think, on understanding spiritual abuse, although it's not in the government guidelines, but it's very important to understand it because it does happen to women and men of faith. There are many different forms of spiritual abuse, as there is, as we've discovered, as we talked about in our last session about the different forms of abuse in a relationship. But spiritual abuse has many different factors to it, and if we're talking about an abusive partner who is using spiritual abuse, this could come under the category of shaming them, making fun or ridiculing their religious belief or practice. I remember personally from my own experience, my partner was not religious at all, but I am, and I was a Christian then, and he would make fun of me when I came home and laugh and say, start to sing and take the mickey out of it. What are you going to do? Are you going to start to pray if something starts to happen in the household? Or if he was coming to become quite physical with me, he goes, why don't you start praying to your God now? They can prevent you from practicing your religion. I mean, I was often told as well that, when I could go to church and when I couldn't, they use your belief to manipulate you, to bully you. They can also demand that your children will not be raised in your faith. And they use religious texts or belief to justify other kinds of abuse towards you. So this is, like I said, this is an abusive partner abusing you. But we also have where leaders also take that stance also of abusing members of their congregation also, where they use scriptures or beliefs to humiliate you, to embarrass you. A big one here is to coerce you into giving money or other resources that you didn't want to give, forcing you or pressuring you to feel that you're obliged to do certain things in the church when it's against your will. So these tactics, both within the church and in a home, spiritual abuse can be quite damaging to a person of faith. So it's quite it's a huge topic which rarely gets spoken about. But I'm really glad that we're being able to do that now, Ava, in some form.
Absolutely. And, in particular reference to domestic abuse, I certainly know when you deliver training, Kim, we deliver some training to churches on domestic abuse. There are particular scriptures in the Bible that can be used to kind of reinforce abuse as well. Particular. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about any of them, really, any of those scriptures that can be used from the Bible to indicate or to justify kind of abusive practices. So this could either be by pastors, or say if both parties are in the church, both partners, both spouses are in the church, that can be used, to encourage kind of abusive practices or further abuse the person.
Well, I think probably one scripture I think I would like to talk about is, and I think one that is often used as a demonstration in regards to being always used in a form of spiritual abuse, is the one, the Bible, where it says, "Wives, submit to your husband as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church." And I think that's in I believe that is in Ephesians 5:22-23. And I've heard this countless times, the scripture being used by leaders and the perpetrator against the victim in regards to a woman's role in regards to her household with her husband. And when it says, "Wife, submit to your husband as the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife," often used to say that's what you should be doing. That's the way you should be behaving. That is how a woman must be with her husband. Because it says it there in the Bible. That's what God says. And of course, your husband is the head of you. You're given a sort of sense of submission, that you must be, you submit to your husband, submit to his ways, submit to anything that he says or does to you, that you must accept it. For me, I'm going to be quite plain here. The bottom line is that any form of abuse is unacceptable. And there's not a scripture in the Bible that would condone it or say, this is what you should be doing and this is how you should be behaving. Because that is not the God we serve. And even in our training, we talk about how our main scripture is God is love. And if God is love, why would he say that you're supposed to submit to your husband? He is the head of the household. You have to do as he says. That's not the God that we serve. Because if you finish reading the rest of that on Ephesians 24, it says, "Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives submit to their husbands in everything." And it basically telling you that it's all about the church. It's about Christ. It's about submitting to the Lord. It's submitting to the headship of God. And it's amazing how scriptures can be twisted and used as a form of, well, this is a spiritual abuse, as telling you that this is how you're supposed to behave, this is what you're supposed to do in your household with your husband or your wife in some cases. But it's completely wrong, because that's not the God. I always say to people, actually, I said, if Jesus was right by your side right now and you were experiencing that in your household, what do you think Jesus would say? And I certainly don't believe the God I know would not turn around and say, well, yes, actually, yes, submit to your husband. Yes, anything, if he's beating you, yes, accept it. It's all very well. No, there's a different sort of submission, as in respect to your husband, as he will respect you also. So it's a two-way street here. So what we do, in our training, I mean, we have different exercises and different scriptures that we give to our delegates to go into groups, and we really sort of trash out, where physical abuse or sexual abuse or any sort of abuse they could find or see in these the narrative that we give them. And it's amazing that how reading the Bible you miss these things, and you don't see where sexual abuse or sort of any sort of spiritual abuse pertains in the Bible, because you don't think about it like that. But that's a great thing about our training, is that we open up the eyes and the ears and the spiritual mindset of those that are part of our training, to see that, this is unacceptable in many, many ways. And when we break it down, it becomes quite clear.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to touch on here before we swing out of the session. I just wanted to touch on, not so much spiritual abuse, but as a result of experiencing spiritual abuse, a lot of the research point to women internalizing some of the scriptures and thinking it works both ways. Some of the scriptures can help women to manage when they're experiencing abuse, and they may even say that the fact that they made it out of abuse was because of their faith and because of relying on particular scriptures. But at some point during the abuse, some women or some people who are being victimized may read the scripture and think to themselves that they're not being faithful enough. They're not being patient enough. They're not being pious enough. They need to wait on the Lord to answer their prayers. Some people who are being victimized might be advised by either people in the church or their friends to pray for the abuser, to pray for the person who's carrying out the abuse. And obviously, if the abuse carries on, the person who's being abused might be thinking, what am I doing wrong? I've prayed, I've read the scriptures, and this abuse is still happening. So what we think is really important is making that distinction between the adversities. We know life throws up so many different challenges, and we're called upon to draw upon our faith. We're called upon to rise to those challenges. But we need to be able also to discern when the challenges that we're facing are abuse and we need some help to manage with them, or they are the everyday challenges in life. Like if you're bereaved, for example, it's going to be difficult for a time, but with time and with support, you will move on from that particular experience. But we can't conflate or get them all mixed up together and thinking that abuse is just another one of life challenges. Experiencing such levels of abuse can be fatal for a lot of women. It can be really life-limiting. So one of the things I wanted to leave with from the session today is that in the UK, there's the Association of Christian Counselors. Look it up on your web browser. If you think you're experiencing any form of spiritual abuse, but if you think you're experiencing domestic abuse, again, call the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. But for those particular and specific contextual issues to do with your faith, do access some of these support services, some of these counseling services that can help you through difficult circumstances when it comes to faith. Okay, so we have to end it now. So soon. I feel like we've just begun. So bye from me.
Always.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you found it inspiring and insightful. If you have been affected by any of the issues raised today, feel free to contact the Association of Christian Counselors in your area. For more information about our ministry, please visit ntcg.org.uk/WDM.